Let's get to this week's mailbag. You can email in info@davidpakman.com. Also, random YouTube posts, comments rather, or Reddit posts, or whatever else might end up being featured in this segment, and no shortage of different topics to look at. Many substantive, which I know many of you have been saying, David, I prefer the substantive emails and comments that you display. We have quite a mix today, that's for sure. Jamie wrote in. Jamie says, hey, David, I don't usually write in, but I just had to after this. I watch your content regularly, and so your videos show up in my recommendation feed on YouTube. One clip that you posted earlier today, this was late last week, was soaking wet Trump explodes, walks out of Piers Morgan interview. But the phrasing of soaking wet Trump explodes brings a very different mental image to mind. This happened in another one of your segments when you were commenting on Trump's religiosity, where you said, I don't think Trump has ever gotten on his knees for Jesus, which again brings a very different mental image to mind. If it's intentional, I love it. But if it's not, I thought I would let you know. No, Jamie, we know exactly what we're doing. We know exactly what we're doing. And I absolutely love this email. This email is genius on about 3 or 4 different levels. And I couldn't thank you enough for it, Jamie. But yes, no, the titles are not an accident. Vinko from Norway wrote in, and Vinko says, David, first off, great show. I'm a loyal listener and subscriber and American expat living in Norway. Can you I know, by the way, I know the term expat is very controversial with some in our audience, but I'm reading the email as written. Can you spare a minute to explain why some people refer to Ukraine as Ukraine and others as the Ukraine? Many thanks and keep up the great work. I seriously appreciate your insight on current events. So the Ukraine is a reference to the Soviet era, where when you say the Ukraine, you're sort of saying the borderlands. And so the reason that I don't say the Ukraine, and I understand it's really not correct to say the Ukraine anymore, is that the country as it exists today as an independent country, at least for now, we'll see what Putin gets away with, is that it's the country Ukraine. If we say the Ukraine, it would be sort of like saying the outskirts or the borderlands of the Soviet Union rather than an independent country. And those are the historical origins of that. I say Ukraine. I believe it is correct to say Ukraine. Brian wrote in, this is so funny. You guys will understand why in a second. Brian says, hey, David, I'm Brian from Toronto. Love the show. The other day you mentioned your agent and you had a discussion on getting a package to send to CNN Plus, but you were thinking it's a poor idea. Correct me if I'm wrong. However, I think it would be a great move. CNN Plus is likely under immense pressure right now. You could have a great opportunity to bring success to the platform, demonstrate the proven content, make changes from the inside. Plus, the contracts they're giving out aren't too bad either. You could negotiate from a place of power, as your numbers are already proven. CNN Plus has since shut down. Like, as quickly as I told the story to the audience, wow, CNN Plus isn't doing great. They're only getting about 10,000 viewers a day. We get way more than that. And it's like also lame that my agent and I didn't even think to send a proposal to them, in part because I don't want to have 20 bosses. It's more about that. Brian's like, no, it might be a good idea. And in the 3 days since, there's been an announcement that CNN Plus is just shutting down. And that's the right decision. And it is a humiliating expenditure of money for nothing to show for it. I know I've said this before. Many of you are probably getting tired. If CNN took a fraction of what they spent on CNN Plus and just said, hey, we're going to pick the top 10 like YouTube and podcast shows in the political space, and we're going to give them a fraction of the money just to like buy ads on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, the return on investment would have been dramatically better. But sadly, Brian, there's no more conversation to have because CNN Plus is going bye-bye. Kevin wrote in about Trump 2024. Kevin says, I doubt that Trump runs in 2024. He will blame health or claim it won't be a fair election. Trump is too big of a coward to risk losing again. I do think it would be interesting to have a debate between two people that have been president. A normal debate, the candidates answer as to what they would do. This debate, each candidate has an actual record. I completely agree that a debate. Now, is it true? Let me think about that. Has there never been a debate between? I think that's probably true, but I'd have to actually look at the history books on that. But let's assume it's true that Biden versus Trump would be the first campaign where both candidates have been president. I think that would be interesting. But listen, to be honest, I worry if Trump runs and is the Republican nominee, I worry that he wins and that it's a really bad 4 years for the planet and for the country and for so many different people. So my preference would be that Trump not even run. It's not that I'm scared of Trump. I think the risk is the same with DeSantis. And by the way, I think DeSantis would be more dangerous because DeSantis is less incompetent. But my preference would be that both options in 2024 aren't as bad as Trump. And Trump is starting to mention health. And that's not something he previously did. So Kevin may be onto something there. Next message is from Ross. Ross continues to wait, I guess, for the big smoking gun revelation about 2020. Ross says Biden can't even get 10 people at a rally. Everyone knows the Dems and dark money, along with Republican rhinos, rigged the election. It will come out in due time. My question now for it's eventually going to come out people is to say, how long is it going to take? We are now 4, 2, 6, 8. We are 18 months now beyond the 2020 election. Hard to believe, but we are. And we still have no evidence of the fraud that they are convinced exists. So with peace and love and respect and honesty, I want to know, how long is it going to take, Ross? Let me know. Chicken wrote in about food shortages and said this summer, this is a prediction, I guess, from Chicken. This summer, when you can't afford food or there is no food, we'll all be laughing at you. Liberals are the capital R real Nazis. Liberals are the Ku Klux Klan. Check your history if you can. Red. Losers with a capital L. Listen, I'm going to ignore the innuendo and the ad hominems. I just have a different opinion. I've been researching the possibility of food shortages for, 10 days now and did a story on it for you guys last week. I believe there will be some products with limited availability. If you're obsessed with, if you're obsessed with a certain freezer waffle, you might have to choose a different freezer waffle regionally and sporadically, but there aren't going to be shortages of any food group for sure, based on everything I'm reading. Maybe I'm wrong. We don't have to call people Nazis to say I have a different opinion. I just think Chicken is wrong here. Harrison wrote in about book banning and says, this is a genius. This is genius. If it weren't so dangerous, this would be genius. Harrison says, liberals are for banning books just as much as conservatives. Any serious liberal doesn't want public school teachers teaching lessons from the Bible. You know what, Harrison? That's right. And it's not about banning the Bible. It's that we have separation of church and state. Public schools are funded by property taxes and other funds from states, meaning that there has to be separation between church and state. You can't have a public school where everybody goes of no religion and of any religion and say, we're going to teach the Bible here. Now, if you want to have a comparative religion class in a public school, and maybe some high schools have such classes, using religious texts there, not to teach them as true substance, but to teach what is in them and say, here's what the Old Testament Hebrew Bible says. Here's what the New Testament says. Here's the Quran. Here's the spaghetti monster thing. And here's the Greek stuff. You could do that in comparative religion as a history class of sorts. But no, it's against the law to teach lessons from the Bible, as in here's what we learn from the story of Noah's Ark. Here's what we learn about homosexuality or whether you should eat shrimp, and that is against the law. You can't do that. So yes, Harrison, people who follow the law are against that. Groucho wrote in and says the internet was and is way too much for low intelligence folks. Most of these people are holed away in the same small town they were born in, completely terrified of leaving. Now they have all this crazy info from snake oil salesmen at their fingertips, and it has kicked their paranoia into overdrive. You're basically describing the way reactionary politics works. I mean, Groucho's using provocative language, but Groucho's completely correct. You have sheltered people who, through a combination of lack of economic means in some cases and bad parenting, and, we got to kind of tell it like it is. People end up extraordinarily sheltered, and then they are targeted with fear-based rhetoric. And they fall for it, and then they go on Facebook and they post it. And then that creates this echo chamber and filter bubble where they get more of the same stuff. Next thing you know, you're drinking urine. It's a sad reality, but Groucho is spot on. And lastly, Terry says, David Pakman will support the war until the last Ukrainian is dead. The war pig Pakman is so brave. I actually don't know where this is coming from, but the last week or so, I've been getting more and more comments and questions that seem to assume I support the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I've never said anything to suggest that. I obviously don't support the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And quite frankly, I would love for people to knock it off because it's just a waste of time. I don't support the Russian invasion of Ukraine, so I don't know why you would come to me and tell me that I do. If you have a comment that you'd like to see featured, you can email info@davidpakman.com. We have a fantastic bonus show for you today. Become a member. Really, there's no better time. April, beautiful month to do it. Sign up at joinpakman.com. You'll get access to the bonus show. You'll get the daily show 6 hours before everybody else. It's a beautiful thing.